In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the BreakApart tool here in Pixel Creator Pro. Now, BreakApart is located right next to Add Aperture. It's this little gray button. It's kind of unassuming button, but it's actually quite useful. And it's not marked, but if you know what that is, it's just BreakApart. And we'll show you some of the different things you can do with the BreakApart tool. So let's go ahead and begin by just making a selection. Choosing Add Aperture, that creates a new image layer. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab my rectangular selection tool and I'm just going to delete a few parts of this just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that we can do with this. And then I'm going to transform the selection and rotate it horizontally. And then I'm going to pick it up and move it. And again, just delete a couple more areas. Delete there. And then I'm going to come over here and delete there. And then I'm going to transform the selection one more time. Make it a little bit less narrow. And pull it over. That looks good. And then finally, I'm just going to reposition this a little bit. And hit delete. Alright, so what I've done is I've just taken one large image opening and I've cut it up into several smaller pieces using some basic Photoshop functions. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to take each section of what I've just cut up and make it its own separate image layer. And right now everything is on one layer. So if I click on this button, Break Apart, it will in fact locate each area of that shape that I just created, and it's converting each section into its own separate image opening. And it just takes a few seconds here to make that determination. And I'll go ahead and turn off these layers here, and now you can see what a great effect we have done. So if I toggle these layers off, you can see now each one is its own separate image layer. So that is one function of Break Apart. Now if we had a text layer and I chose Break Apart, what that does is of course it takes each individual letter of our text and makes each one its own separate image layer that we could then do some fun things with that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So for example, I could just rotate these letters a little bit and just create a more fun configuration of our lettering. And we wouldn't be able to do this if our lettering wasn't each in its own individual layer. Now obviously once it's promoted each one of the letters to its own separate layer, you can see that they're all individual shape layers. So this text is no longer editable as it was, but you can do some unique things with your text layers. And each one of these is actually an image opening. So you can insert an image or a texture into each letter, which can have an interesting effect depending on the type of font that we use. Another option for the Break Apart function has to deal with a shape layer. So unlike a text layer or a non-shape layer, in this case we actually have three individual paths that make up our shape 1, which are three individual boxes. And so when I click on this, all it does is it takes each path, and makes it its own separate image layer. And that can actually be quite useful, and we'll show you another example of Break Apart as we get into the Merge Aperture tool in our next video of how all these things kind of come together and get a better understanding of some of the different functionality here inside Pixel Creator Pro.